Hey there berries, welcome to patch 10.15 support tier list. Hopefully you've been doing okay so far this season, and I hope that these tier lists can keep providing you with help and advice that you may be seeking in order to climb into your solo queue games. At the moment I'm streaming on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. We're doing these tier lists live as we do every 2 weeks on a Monday. You're more than welcome to join in and catch your tier list a day early on the live stream if you wish. And you can see the berries over there. Wave berries, hello. If you guys have any questions as well during this tier list, I'll try and pick up the occasional question in case I missed something, or if there's something, you know, urgently pressing, usually related to the same tier. If you ask a question about a champion in a different tier than the one I'm on, I'll ignore it, but I'll take questions after we've done the tier 1 and got to the top. So this patch there's some big things and there's some not really big things at the same time. So probably the biggest thing that's going to affect a lot of the supports this patch is the Spellthief buff. 25% mana base regen increase across the board on the item, plus a little bit of extra AP once the item is fully completed. This is basically to try and, at the moment, bot lane is a little bit relic shield centric at the moment, where there's no incentive to actually be aggressive at all in the lane. So you got a lot of supports taking relic shield, and there isn't really a punishment for taking relic shield. Yeah, you don't have like mana regen, but if you don't need to do any trades, then you don't need to use as much mana anyway, so you can play pretty defensively and basically just get through the lane, relying on enemy team overextending for their own Spellthief charges. So this Spellthief buff will definitely benefit like the AP champions like Zara, Brand, Lux for sure, because they can generally get stacks off generally easily anyway, whereas champions like Nami and Soraka, they don't really benefit as much from this. Obviously the mana regen anyway is quite nice, but they're still going to have to go forward and overextend a little bit to get the gold trades off anyway. But like even more so for Soraka, she had a massive buff a few patches ago where they increased her base mana regen by quite a large portion. So an extra 25%. Anyway, she didn't really need any fairy charms or anything like that, but it's just kind of like there, it's okay. Honestly, I would like to see a relic shield minor nerf, but overall, it's not really too much of a big of a deal. We've got some other changes in this patch as well. We've got Lilia, a new champion coming in. Don't play her as support. I can guarantee there's going to be content creators saying, oh, look at this new champion, it can be played anywhere. Don't play it as support, please don't. And then we have you got Nexus Blitz, a new game mode. We've got some new skins for the Spirit Blossom stuff. There's a new Thresh skin. Thresh is actually getting nerfed a little bit this patch. It's kind of funny that he's getting a skin and then getting a tiny nerf, but the nerf isn't crazy, it's a lantern nerf. And then the AD carry wise, you got a buff there for Caitlyn, and I did miss one support actually, Yuumi. Yuumi's getting a buff this patch on her passive shield, where they've taken off a little bit of her mana, flat mana that she gets from the shield, but they're giving her % mana back as well to kind of counter the costs of the heal that they did. I think it was the last patch or the patch before where they made it so that it had % mana cost on her heal. I think we've gone through all the changes there that will affect you as support. Spellbook did get nerfed. Unsealed Spellbook did get nerfed. I don't know if anyone was picking it up. I had a video where I did it on Rakan. That got nerfed. I don't know if I'll be testing that anymore. I'll have to see how often that summoner is taken up on. But it's a shame we didn't get to showcase that a little bit more, because that was actually kind of fun doing a Spellbook on the Rakan. I did suggest it in my tier list, either last tier list or the one before that, that could be a possibility, and it did kind of work. So might adventure down that lane, that summoner rune route, more into the future. Anyway, now into the whole guts of the tier list. Tier 5, you're probably looking at the entire time, aren't you? A lot of champions there that aren't great right now. I don't really feel like I need to mention anything there. If you don't see a support, a champion that you might deem as support on my tier list, it could be for one of two reasons. It's garbage, or it's just so niche that it's something that I'm not willing to advertise on a tier list anyway, unless it gets showcased properly more wider range of matchups. So stuff like the Pantheon and Set, I think in solo queue you're gonna it's those two picks are very good against Yuumi, but apart from that, it's like kind of meh and very cheesy, and I don't really want to recommend it. I mean, I could probably put it in tier 5, but I think in those specific situations where people are taking those champions, they are higher in their own right in those cases, but it's not something I want to place properly in this tier list because it's way too wild of a where they could actually be on this tier list anywhere from like tier 6 to tier 2 depending on like the actual thing they're actually going against. So that's the reason why I'm not putting those. It's just too volatile for the tier list. But actually tier 5, scrolling up to tier 4. Boop, 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 boop. Not any changes really here. I could have maybe pushed Brand up slightly, and Zareth and Vel'Koz. Those are probably the champions benefiting the most from the Spellthief change. But honestly, they're just not performing well enough anyway. I don't think 25% mana regen is going to increase their win rates much, or if at all. So that they still remain there, but they will feel ever so slightly nicer to play with that Spellthief buff coming through. I think like a Maokai Senna thing can work quite nicely. The Guardian changes definitely did hit a few champions there. Tom Kench is pretty as useless as always. And then the Taric as well kind of fell behind quite a lot. Yeah, nothing really too else to mention there. If you're doing Yasuo bot lane, Gragas, that pairs up really nicely together. Other than that, there's nothing else really I want to showcase there. Braum as well. The movement speed on the Guardian, I don't think it gets talked about too much, but it did affect a lot of champions because stuff like Braum used to be in like tier 3, and that's and Taric I think maybe touched into tier 3 at some point, but that movement speed on the Guardian was a huge hit. Moving up to tier 3, what you might start to notice now from tier 3 onwards, the pyramid is getting fatter at the top. This tier list I think is the first time we've had more than 5 champions in tier 1. So I'll explain my reasoning behind that once we get up there, but you'll start to see fewer champions here now in tier 3 and tier 2. So Thresh, oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, like in the actual patch, like kind of evaluation at the start of Swain changes. I'll touch on this at the end of tier 3. So Thresh got his lantern nerfed by a couple of seconds, but it's nothing dramatic. He's still really good in high elo, but pretty bad in low elo. I think they did that to nerf him in pro play slightly. I think they're getting sick of people getting saved by lanterns. But overall, in a solo queue environment, I think Thresh tier 3 generally, maybe tier 2 in Diamond Plus, maybe Plat Plus, generally Diamond Plus. Thresh is better when you get into high elo, but generally for most players across the board, where the whole player base is, because if you factor in Diamond, it's only like 3% of the player base or something like that. For the majority of players, overwhelming majority of players, Thresh is a tier 3 pick. Nautilus is a decent hook option in the lower elos for sure. Once again, it's kind of got the same as the Alistair syndrome. He's on this tier list as well. If you go in, you don't really get to go out. So make sure you're committing properly when you're doing that. But yeah, it's okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. It's okay enough to play in your solo queue games if you wish. Everything in tier 3 plus is, in my opinion. Morgana still tier 3. I'm thinking about pushing her into tier 4, honestly. Our play rate's gone down. Feels like it's going down and down and down every single patch. I am thinking about putting her into tier 4. I think she, even as a safe pick, she isn't even particularly that amazing anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I think tier 3 in some options with some poked champions like a Caitlyn, she can do okay with if you land a binding, but I think she's just holding on. Bear in mind, left or right is no indication of where they are in a tier list. But I think if I had to choose the lowest one here, I think it's Morgana in this tier 3. Rakan gets stronger, obviously, if you're playing with Azaya because of the combination powers that they have between the two of them. But on his own, he loses power there. I think he's very good in if you need an instant interrupt for something like a Katarina ulti, or if you have good AoE in your team so you can gather them up in a team fight. But apart from that, I don't really like the champion overall, but there are a few things that you can do cheesy in the laning phase early levels to get a couple of plays through. yeah, I mean, all these tier 3 champions are viable, but, you know, there are better options up above. As we briefly talked about, the same with the kind of Nautilus syndrome there. And then the Pike, I think overall he got affected badly from, well, it wasn't a buff, put it that way. His damage on his Q went up slightly, but his armor and magic resistance went down in the previous patch. I've tested him out a couple of times. I'll be openly honest here, saying they weren't exactly the best games anyway, but you feel that, you know, he feels squishier, for sure. So if you snowball in the lane with the Pike, you're always going to do really well. But it's more devastating if you can't manage to have that happen. Now Swain is really difficult to pinpoint where he's going to be. I had to do some research for this one and get an idea for how the Swain one-trick ponies felt about this. So the most important thing to factor in here is two things that are getting changed here. In my opinion, it's like the movement speed -10 is huge, and he no longer gets mana on his passive, which might be okay considering that Spellthief has now got a mana % increase now, but by an extra 25% for this patch, but it's still not going to be any mana regen now from the passive, so that will hit you a bit when you're doing those combos with your E. If you're going to build Swain for this patch now, it's going to be Q max no matter what. I used to put points in E, but I wouldn't now anymore. It would be maxing Q, maxing W second, and then maxing E, so QWE. I think his damage will go up more with his Q if you can get in range. I'm not sure how much this -10 movement speed is going to impact him. Movement speed is really difficult to put a value on, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with him, and I'll reevaluate him over the next patch. There's some interactions with his W range got massively increased, but I don't really feel like it matters that much. You might get to interrupt someone's recall or something like that, but I don't see that. That W change will feel nice, but it's not like game breaking or anything like that. The cooldown on that is pretty long, and the damage on that isn't exactly crazy. But we'll see. I'll be playing this for sure when this comes out and testing it out, and it's just a really difficult champ to pinpoint when it's had so many. It's not like just 1 or 2 changes, it's like changes on everything across the board, so we'll have to wait and evaluate, but I feel like it's probably going to be tier 3 still. I think it's going to be difficult to get into that melee range for Q for where that's going to be most of your damage, but it's too difficult at the moment. But I don't think he's going to be higher in tier 3. In fact, I'm a little bit worried he might actually end up in tier 4 because of these changes for the support role. This might be good for if you're going against a melee top laner, but in terms of bot side, I think it's going to be difficult for it to come through properly. All right, let's move up to tier 2. Tier 2, you probably see a couple of new picks there. I've put Karma up from tier 3 to tier 2. And I've moved Yuumi up as well. Spoilers. Yuumi used to be in tier 2 as well. She's in tier 1 after this change. And I got a feeling there's something else there changed as well. I'm not sure. Okay, so as we briefly touched on at the start of the video, the Spellthief's change doesn't really affect the Soraka too much. Affects the Nami in terms of giving her more mana regen, but it's still putting yourself in a bit of a dodgy situation against some of those Relic Shield champions, like, I know what else got moved up, I was going to say Lulu. But yeah, it's difficult to go in trade against someone like a Lulu and then not get punished and yourself for overextending. So, it's what it is. This tier 2 overall for most of these champions haven't changed too much. I should probably just talk about why Karma is in tier 2. So Karma is in tier 2. She's going to get that mana. She's going to take the Spellthief's Edge anyway, so it's a buff for her for sure. Allows her to be a little bit more aggressive still in the laning phase. Make sure she doesn't really go as much now. Relic Shield was never really an option for her anyway, because you really want to just harass during that laning phase. So that extra little bit of mana regen will get her a couple more Qs, or, you know, 1 or 2 more defensive abilities in the laning phase. I think as we get in longer into the season, it's always kind of shown that game length is higher at the start of the season, and as people get used to the patches that are coming out and the general theme of the season, average game length generally goes down. So with Karma being very good in the laning phase, that's already going to be more of the game than it would normally be. So stuff that's going to be stronger earlier will start to come through as the season starts to wrap up. So laning phase dominance will start to become more and more showing throughout the season, unless there's like some massive like nerfs to some of these champions that do really well during the laning phase, which I don't, it would be pretty dramatic. So I think Karma is likely, unless you get some direct nerfs, to stay tier 2, I'd imagine, for most of the entire season now. So if you are looking for basically a mage in the laning phase and a kind of half enchanter in the mid game onwards, then Karma's the champion for you. A lot of mobility, a lot of damage harassment until mid game. Can kind of CC a single target trying to backdoor into the back line, and does reveal those stealth champions if you do get the tether on before they do go in. So she has her uses, but yeah, she does fall off quite quickly coming out of the laning phase, but laning phase being a larger portion of the game now, yeah, she's really annoying to play against, and the damage base value on her damage is very high. I don't think we need to touch too much. Like, I think 1 or 2 people questioned the Bard being tier 2. Bard can potentially be tier 1 or tier 3. I feel like the higher ELO you are, and how good you are mechanically, will determine you overall as a player where Bard's going to be. It's kind of like one of the volatile things I was mentioning at the start of the stream. He is a very volatile champion. He is completely dependent on how good the person is playing him. He can be played in pretty much almost any matchup. Ideally against an enemy team that doesn't have too many escapes in the mid lane, and that you have an early-ish jungler. But Bard, you know, generally is lower in the order in lower ELOs because your mechanics are probably not ready for it. But as you get to like high gold, start introducing Bard if you want to. And yeah, if you like roaming and stuff, Bard is the king of all the roaming here. So can potentially be tier 1 in super high ELO as well, like Diamond 2 plus if you're watching this tier list for some reason and you're Diamond 2 or above, then Bard is probably one of the best picks that you can have in your kit to essentially carry a game overall. But in the lower ELOs, you're probably not going to be quite there mechanically in order to do that. Alright, up to tier 1. So yeah, I think this is the first time we've had 6 champions here in a tier 1. Lux is loving the change to Spellthiefs. So is Sona. And Lulu, if she decides to go Spellthieves, can still use it. She's one of the best users of Spellthieves as her picks passive. And the auto attack generate 2 charges of Spellthieves for her anyway. With the Yuumi as well, that's huge for her that she's getting an extra 25% mana increase on the Spellthieves edge, and the passive changes as well. So those 2 things coming in definitely sort of her mana issues. I think I was wrong last patch to put her in tier 2. I think she probably should have tapped in into tier 3, the Yuumi, just about. I had a couple of games where the Yuumi game felt really nice if you were really far ahead, but if you were behind on Yuumi, man, it was devastating. Unless you maybe had someone ultra fed on your team to carry through. But these mana changes for the Yuumi definitely put her in that place again where she's going to be annoying as hell to deal with. I think Lulu is probably been understated slightly in my tier list as well. Probably could have nudged her up to tier 1 a little bit sooner, especially with how everyone is starting to take Relic Shield. yeah, probably should have considered putting her higher. I mean, the downside of playing Lulu is that you are relying on your AD carry a little bit more. So if you are picking Lulu and you got like a Twitch AD carry and your Twitch sucks, you're going to be left not really getting to do too much overall in this. So yeah, it is AD carry dependent a little bit, but I think over what she provides, generally you should be okay. Generally. Leona being the best tank here for sure in this lineup. Can roam pretty easily with Boots of Swiftness or Boots of Mobility. One of the tankiest in this lineup as well. And really low cooldowns on her Q and her ulti. And you know, if you whiff your ulti, you can then hopefully your team will reset and then look for another fight in about a minute's time. Soda's been doing really well statistically for a really long time now. Right, I haven't really touched her. Generally, Spellthief's Edge, ideal. Extra 25% mana regen helps with the Spellthief's change. Helps her for sure. But, you know, you can still do Spellthieves if you're scared about against the hard engage. You still have that option. It's not as ideal, but it's okay. Senna tier 1, depending on your AD carry mechanics. This is another volatile pick. This can easily be a tier 1 pick or a tier 4 for you. Really difficult to place, but I don't feel like she needs as much skill as Bard, even though there's a lot of mechanics happening there. And if you have an AD carry history, Senna is going to be really good for you if you're making a transition into the support role, as you probably have done a couple of games on her at least anyway. But yeah, all the same rules apply with positioning and things like that on Senna as the AD carry role. Also, if you play Senna, you're going to get some AD carry experience there as well. So it could be a good pickup anyway, just to train AD carry as a secondary role, if that's what you're thinking of. So Senna is a really strong pick right now. And then Lux, tier 1. So she's been tier 1 on my tier list for 2 or 3 patches now. I know a few people get a little bit tilted when I say she's in tier 1. It's the Easelo. I didn't think it would be the... When I first read that buff and kind of saw it for the first time, I was like, this isn't that crazy. But it is crazy in lane. Like, if you can... It's not too difficult to land your E's in lane. If you can do it, the base damage on that value is insanely high, even if you're not proccing the passive. I think is the illumination. It's crazy. And then generally there's enough squishy targets for you to do a binding ulti, and even if it doesn't kill them, it puts them down to like 30-40%. So if you do it on a squishy support, they're taken out of the team fight. Basically, they have to play like really far back. And the ult cooldown at level 11 onwards is like 30 seconds. So you can usually get 2 ultis off in a team fight as long as you use your first one to do as a harassment. So throughout the game, she's generally pretty annoying, and she can play really far back as well. So the Zyra used to be like the best AP mage support in the game, in my opinion. But Lux has kind of overtaken that role. She does more damage than the Zyra. She can harass at a safer distance than the Zyra. The only thing that I'd say Zyra gives more than the Lux is a little bit more crowd control in some of the fights. But I think also the raw damage and the cooldown on her ulti is so disgusting and low that it just requires it one. It's like Blitzcrank but range. That's probably the best way to put it. Lux is basically Blitzcrank at range. You know, if you make that Blitzcrank hook, you know, come through on that one target, you know, you've won the fight right, pretty, especially like late game. That can be huge. It's the same, literally the same with Lux. But the fact is that you kind of got like 2 hooks because of the double binding, and the ult goes through everyone. So, yeah. So she's basically like a killer Blitzcrank, and she provides more than Blitzcrank as well. The only downside, obviously, compared to her and Blitzcrank is that she's squishier. But you can buy Zhonya's second item, and then that puts you at 45% cooldown reduction anyway. So you can still buy a lot of time for your team with Zhonya's use as well. So yeah, I'm really liking her at the moment. I think at worst, she's tier 2. And I think Lux is a really good pick for most people that are playing League anyway at the moment, as I'm pretty sure 99% of the player base has played a Lux game at some point. So they can introduce her into the support role as a mage if they wish. But bear in mind, I play Lux as AP. In the bot lane, I don't do the Enchanter style. If you're going to do the Enchanter style with a hyper carry, I probably would put her at a tier 2. That's not as good as something like a Lulu. But if you're playing her as an AP raw damage kind of support, then yeah. That always triggers people, by the way. I know a lot of AD carries get triggered by that as well. My support buying damage items? Whee! But, you know, it is what it is. Sorry, AD carries. We can do more damage than you, I'm afraid. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the 10.15 support tier list. I'll probably take some questions after this video has closed out, but you're always welcome if you're watching on YouTube to come over to twitch.tv/Bizzleberry, or if you want, and I'm not online, join discord.gg/Bizzleberry. Yeah, had to think about that. We got a Discord channel. Get yourself verified and ask any support questions or any of the questions that you want to ask in the Discord channel, and we've got plenty of support mains. I think it's like nearly 2,000 people in that Discord channel now, so it's pretty busy. So come and say hi, and if you've got any questions or you just want to hang out and do some viewer games and stuff, we'll be doing some of the Nexus Blitz on stream as well over the next few days. So if you want to join in for some viewer games, come on, come join in, and you might make some new friends. All right, hope this tier list helps you, and I'll be bringing out another one in 2 weeks' time. So take care, guys, and stay safe.